Hey guys, it's the MetalBlade5, and I've already made 2 of these unpopular opinions videos, which have vaguely included stuff related to Smash Bros. But with me playing Ultimate and spending so much time unlocking all the characters, 100% completing World of Light, and getting the best spirit in the game, that my mind started to wander, and I realized just how many unpopular Smash Bros. Opinions I have. Not just on Ultimate, but on the previous games as well. Least of all is the fact that I don't play competitively and prefer to play with items on and stages with hazards. I don't even mind the Yellow Devil as much as everyone else. But even for unpopular opinion standards, I imagine that some of these will be really out there compared to what everyone else thinks, so brace yourself. Also, as a disclaimer, the first 2 opinions are minor nitpicks I have of Ultimate. It's nothing that affects my views of the game itself, and the last one will be Ultimate related. But for anyone who says, Sakurai has given us so much in this game, you're being ungrateful, I'm not using them to criticize the game in any way. Even with the Waluigi stuff, I am disappointed that he's still an assist trophy, but the times I kept bringing that up were just for comedic purposes. And they weren't offensive jokes, so it's not like I'm using that as an excuse to avoid criticism like some people do. As for that first nitpick on Ultimate, and this is something I very briefly mentioned in my joke reaction video on the last Direct, is to do with the roster and how it's organized. I'm classing this as an unpopular opinion because I don't really see people talk about this. The characters are positioned in the order that they were developed or revealed as playable characters across the series. Where I get that it fits Ultimate's everyone is here approach, but I would have preferred it if the characters were organized by their series like in the previous games. I just think it looks more neat and actually organized that way, while Ultimate's roster setup feels disjointed to me. You have Mario in the top left, but then Luigi at almost the opposite side of the roster. All of the Donkey Kong Country characters are miles apart, and the third-party characters are shoved in between the first parties. I always like the third parties being placed at the end as it emphasized that they are special guest additions. Additionally, I sometimes forget where the character I want to select is located and have to find them again. Especially when switching characters in World of Light, when more often than not, the one I'm currently playing is obscured by the ready to fight text. And I have heard of other people also struggling to find their character on occasion, so I think that them being organized by series would reduce that issue. Using my shitty photo editing skills, this is my take on what the roster could look like if it was organized by series, with the Echo Fighters located next to their originals due to the option of overlaying them, the third parties organized by company, except for Bayonetta because she's in a weird position, and the Mii Fighters on the very end like they were in Wii U and 3DS. And obviously the DLC characters would get added onto the end of the third parties like they were previously. Again, it's not a massive issue. I'm not like, this is the worst game ever because of the position of the characters on the select screen. It's just a nitpick about preference. The other nitpick, which I've had since E3, is that they changed the victory quote. In the previous games, the announcer would always say, this game's winner is, or the winner is. But now he says, such and such wins, like a traditional fighting game. It's not so much the change to the line itself that bothers me, rather the fact that I don't think it syncs up well with the Smash Bros. Victory screens. With the previous lines, the announcer would say the character's name last, and thus it syncs with that character's name flashing on screen. But in Ultimate, the name still pops up despite the announcer already saying the character's name, so it's like, Mario wins! Mario! I think if they removed the character names popping up, it would be less weird. Also, I think the way the announcer says some of the characters' names doesn't fit well with the wins voice clip. For example, I've heard that the reason for this change was so that it would be easier to translate into other languages, although I haven't seen this officially stated, but in an ideal world I would have preferred it if they hadn't changed it. Again, it's not a massive issue, just a nitpick. So with that nitpicking stuff out of the way, let's get to the much bigger unpopular opinions. This is something I felt strongly about ever since around the time I started playing Smash Bros. Brawl was the first game in the series I played, and there were 2 characters in that roster that I've seen a lot of people disliking. Even nowadays, I see people at the very least not caring about them. But personally, I like playing as both of these characters, and it bugs me that they get treated this way. Those characters are Mr. Game & Watch and R.O.B. I get that they're both weird choices for fighters as they were the WTF characters for their respective Smash Bros. Games, and while I don't usually like using joke characters in fighting games, I do enjoy playing as them. They're not my best characters, but I do think they're fun. When I locked Mr. Game & Watch in Brawl, I started playing as him just as a joke because I found the concept of a stick man beating up other video game characters funny, and I ended up being really good with him. In Brawl, Game & Watch was one of my best characters as I got to grips with how a lot of his moves work and could kill opponents very efficiently whilst also staying alive for long periods of time. After Brawl, there started being more characters that I was just better with than Game & Watch, but I still play him from time to time. As for R.O.B, I essentially covered all this in my very old and very bad top 10 overhated characters video. In the past, I saw a lot of people hate on him simply because the R.O.B peripheral sucked. I always thought that was a dumb reason to dislike R.O.B as a fighter. If you don't like the character themselves and or their moveset, then that's fine. But for R.O.B, the peripheral has nothing to do with either of those. While I'm not as good with R.O.B compared to Game & Watch, I still found him fun to play because I could pull off a lot of combos and safely rack up the opponent's damage with his special moves, then launch them by miles with his smash attacks. Plus, he has an amazing recovery, which helped me stay alive a lot. Whilst R.O.B's final smash in Brawl is considered one of the worst in the game, I was able to get a lot of kills with it thanks to the knockback the little energy pulse does every few seconds. And from then on, his final smashes keep getting significantly improved. I played as R.O.B from time to time in Brawl, and that carried over to all future games. But sadly for me, I hardly see anybody play these two. Ever since Ultimate came out, I've only seen one person play as R.O.B, and not a single Game & Watch. On the subject of characters, but this time it's about character preferences, and it's also something that I mentioned a long time ago, I like playing as Dark Pit more than regular Pit. In Wii U and 3DS, Dark Pit was the clone that everybody hated. People were more tolerant of Lucina because she's a popular character, but Dark Pit didn't have that. Many people said he was a pointless addition, a wasted slot, from those who don't know how clones are developed, and had no differences to Pit other than his final smash. Which is wrong. When Ultimate adopted the term Echo Fighter for clones, although I personally prefer to still call them clones, and made them a subcategory of characters, people stopped hating Dark Pit so much, but he still seems to be the least popular clone as I see all the others get used but not him. Even when I see people compare Pit and Dark Pit, they always prefer the former, which is fine, but I feel like I'm the only person who's the opposite. In terms of my skill with both Pits, it's about equal, but what makes me prefer Dark Pit is mainly because of his actual differences from the original. His arrows have less control, but move faster and deal more damage, which I like to use to snipe opponents at long distances. But the main reason why I prefer Dark Pit is the damn side special, the Electroshock Arm. It deals more damage than Pit's equivalent, making it my primary method of raising the opponent's percentage, and I believe it has more super armor than Pit's, although I could be wrong about that. It just feels that way to me. Plus, I like his final smash more than any of Pit's. The Dark Pit staff shoots a beam across the entire length of the stage, dealing huge knockback to anybody it hits. As it's highly effective at KOing opponents at lower percentages, I find it a more precise way of killing people compared to Pit's. Usually my reason for playing as a character in the first place is if I like that character, and I do like Dark Pit's character in Uprising as he doesn't follow the evil clone cliche by being more of an anti-hero. At the time of Wii U and 3DS, Dark Pit was the only clone who I preferred playing over the original. Now with Ultimate, that title is shared with Chrom, whilst with Daisy, Dark Samus, and Richter I like playing as them equally to their originals. Dark Pit was never a popular choice, but I don't think he was ever considered a bad character by competitive players to my knowledge, which sadly wasn't the case of this character until recently. Ganondorf. I have always liked playing as Ganondorf. In Brawl, Ganondorf was considered the worst character in the game, so upon unlocking him, I tried him out to see why everybody was saying that. My immediate reaction was, whoa, he's really slow! And then I used this neutral special. It did 30% damage in one attack. Ganondorf was the slowest character in Brawl, but also the strongest in terms of attack power. I don't give a shit about tier lists and fighting games and just use which characters I'm good with and think are fun. And Ganondorf is the most obvious case of that. I generally like playing as tanky characters, so Ganondorf's speed didn't bother me, and with how much damage and knockback his attacks deal, I could ironically KO a lot of people quickly. There were plenty of matches where I won with Ganondorf. albeit I had nobody to play with, so they were always computers. My only issue with Ganondorf in Brawl was that whenever I used his up smash, he would sometimes automatically use his explosive chop kick afterwards without me telling him, which left me a sitting duck. But that issue was less prevalent in Wii U and 3DS, where he was still considered a bad character, yet I still won with him a lot. Now in Ultimate, Ganondorf is considered really good. However, from my personal experience, I always felt that Ganondorf was good, and that Ultimate just made him even better. Just to prove my skills with Ganondorf, and be forewarned, this will involve spoilers for World of Light, so skip to the time on screen if you haven't finished it. I got the true ending on my first attempt, then I learned that you had to get both bad endings to get 100%, so I went back and did that. But before quitting, I decided to attempt the challenge which involves completing the first part of the final battle as Ganondorf without dying, because I felt like I could do that. There was also a challenge where you had to beat the final battle without dying once, which I thought, yeah, I'll never be able to do that. But not only did I beat the first part with Ganondorf, I beat the whole thing with him on my first try! I did the vertical climb, the boss rush, and the battle against Galeem and Darkon with just Ganondorf. That's right up there with Amalthus falls down the hole of moments where I wish I was recording. Doing so made me feel like Ganondorf at least got better in the mind of many competitive players, but for another character I like playing as, they're still considered bad. Robin. I see tier lists place Robin pretty low for both Wii U and 3DS and Ultimate, but again, I actually play well as him. I use him because I always play as male Robin. If I had to guess the reason why Robin is low, it's probably due to his tomes and Levin's sword having limited uses before needing to recharge, but when I play as Robin, I try to be conservative with the tomes as a whole. I mainly use Thunder when attempting to charge up to Foron due to how powerful it is, and is the main reason why I can get a lot of kills with Robin. But make sure I have a sizable number of uses left for the other tomes so that when Thunder runs out, I can fall back on them while it recharges, and then it just goes in a cycle. I'm more aggressive with the Levin's sword in the situations where I choose to use it, being when the opponent's at a high percentage, but I never found the recharge time on it to be that long, so its limited use didn't hinder me much. Even when it did need to recharge, I often fell back on Thunder. The reason why I wanted to play as and get good with Robin in the first place was because I was so excited that a Fire Emblem Awakening character was in Smash Bros. And wasn't a clone because of how much I love Awakening. So it bums me out that Robin is considered to not be good. Granted, Robin is my best character, Greninja is my best character in all of Smash Bros. And that's continued with Ultimate so far, but I did consider Robin to be one of my best newcomers in Wii U and 3DS alongside Greninja and Mega Man. And while I haven't played much of him in Ultimate yet, he feels relatively the same. I spend a lot of time talking about characters I find underrated, but the other major part of Smash Bros. Is the stages. And when I think of underrated stages, there's one that always comes to my mind. Pokemon Stadium 2. Specifically that I like Pokemon Stadium 2 more than Pokemon Stadium 1. Everybody says that 1 is miles better than 2, but in the words of Chorus,
I disagree.
I don't dislike Pokemon Stadium 1, but I find it to be a pretty bland and basic stage by comparison. Not that there's anything wrong with basic stages, I like playing on Final Destination for a super serious match. I just generally prefer stages with more gimmicks and hazards. Both stages have the mechanic of switching layouts based on different Pokemon types. One has grass being a forest, water being a pond with a windmill, fire being a burning house and tree, and rock having that annoying cliff to the left. However, all these really do is change the position of platforms. Most of 2's layouts have gimmicks to them, which from my perspective makes them more interesting. The ground layout just changes the platform positioning, like in 1, but as this is the only one that does that, it doesn't bug me. Electric has conveyor belts on both sides of the stage, flying lowers the gravity, and ice makes the ground slippery, but it isn't ice physics that annoy me as it doesn't cause you to slip off the stage. Of course, if you're a competitive player who likes no items Fox-only Final Destination, then you'll obviously prefer 1, but I'm a filthy casual, so I like the more hazard-prone stages. Probably the main reason why I like 2 more is as Brawl was the first one I played 2 first, and then sometime later I just accidentally discovered that there were more stages under the Melee Stages tab. So I guess 2 spoiled me. I talked about a stage that I like but everybody hates. That's a hyperbole, by the way. So it's only fair that I do a stage I don't like but everybody else loves. For that category, the choice, hands down, goes to Temple. I've never been a fan of the stage. It's a stage that I most often avoid, but everybody else loves it. I've never been a big fan of the really large stages because it just makes matches drag on for so long, but I actually like New Pork City more than the stage, despite everybody calling that one worse. From a gameplay standpoint, other than the large size, the reason why I don't like Temple is because it takes frickin' forever to kill people. Not only does the size mean that the blast zones are far away, but there's that small part at the bottom of the stage where even at really high percentages, I'm talking like the 200s here, you'll just bounce off the walls and never die. I hear that's the reason why people like the stage so much, but I just find it obnoxious. You can hit an opponent with numerous strong attacks at a high percentage, and they still won't die. Even around the rest of the stage, I still feel like it takes tons of damage before you can even come close to killing someone unless you're at the very edges of the stage. But I also dislike Temple from an aesthetic standpoint because I always thought the stage looked really dull. It's a Zelda stage, but I have no idea where this is supposed to be. I'm guessing it's based on the temples from Zelda 2, as the music is a remix of the Zelda 2 temple theme, but even with Zelda 2 being an 8-bit game, I don't recall any of the temples looking like this. The only Zelda location I can sort of make out is the church in the background, as it looks like the Temple of Time, but I don't know if that's intentional. With other stages that are from games I played or recognize, I think, oh cool, they used that location from the game, or they're referencing that part of the game, which gives me a bit of an attachment to the stage as it brings back memories of me playing that part, or watching someone else play it if it's from a game I haven't played. However, as Temple doesn't match up with any location from a Zelda game, at least from my perspective, I don't get that feeling, so it comes across as boring to me. Those are unpopular opinions on stages, but on the stages, you also have music playing in the background. And coinciding with me liking a Pokemon stage more than everyone else, there's also a Pokemon remix in Smash Bros. I like more than everyone else. The remix of Cynthia's theme. After Wii U came out and I learned that they remixed Cynthia's theme, I was so excited because I really liked that music from Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. But one look through YouTube comments showed me that everyone thinks the remix sucks and is a completely butchered version of the original. The remix goes for a slower and more dramatic approach with its instruments, as well as being a mashup of the song that plays just before you fight Cynthia, whilst the original is faster paced. Generally, I don't like using slower music for Smash Bros. Because I don't think it fits, although there are exceptions like the original Midna's Lament, and Cynthia's remix is included in that. I do prefer the original, but I still really like the remix because of how dramatic and epic it sounds. It has a different style, but I don't think it's bad. I have it up to max on the Kalos Pokemon League stage for both Wii U and Ultimate. A similar case has occurred with the remix of Gladion's theme in Ultimate. I really like the original. Everybody says the remix is inferior, but I acknowledge it's going for a different style while still liking it. That's all the unpopular opinions I wanted to cover, except for the other Ultimate-related one I mentioned at the beginning. People are going to hate me so much for this, but if there was anyone that still liked me, they stopped doing so after I said I like fairy tales, so I've got nothing to lose. This is something I've also kind of mentioned before, but it was my stupid reaction in a nutshell video for the September Nintendo Direct, which was just filled with memes because I didn't have anything to say from it being late at night my time. It's about Isabel. Personally, Isabel was a very disappointing newcomer reveal at the time for me. Now, I'm not trying to have a go at anybody who likes Isabel, wanted her in the game, or likes playing as her. Isabel was a similar case to Duck Hunt Duo, specifically the dog, and Bayonetta, where I didn't want them to be playable, and went full-on Fugo when they were revealed, but over time I just stopped caring. What I'm about to talk about was how I felt at the time Isabel was revealed, because now when I think about her being in the game, I think, meh. Before being revealed, I didn't want Isabel to be a playable character. That's not because I dislike her or anything. Granted, I don't like her as much as the hardcore Animal Crossing fans, but at worst, I'm indifferent to her. The reason why I didn't want Isabel as a fighter was because I thought it would go against her character. In New Leaf, she's your secretary, playing a purely assistant's role, and is very reserved and a bit clumsy. I thought her role as an assist trophy in Wii U and 3DS perfectly captured that. To me, not only would making her a fighter go against that, and I know there are Smash Bros. Characters that don't fight in their own games, but they don't have personalities that contradict that, but the marketing for Animal Crossing portrays her as a cute mascot character. This is what gave me even stronger feelings against her being playable, as her being cute, combined with her role as an assistant in her game, just made her seem so out of place beating people up, and, to a greater extent, being beaten up. She can get blown up, stabbed, and shot at. And while Smash Bros. Violence is more cartoony, I felt that hardcore Animal Crossing fans would be more heartbroken to see Isabel get beat up. So upon reaching the end of that Nintendo Direct, I fully expected to see a new character, and when Isabel showed up, I instantly thought, oh no! Then my disappointment towards Isabel at the time grew stronger when I saw Isabel's gameplay. I'd heard a lot of people suggest Isabel to be a clone of Villager beforehand, but she's actually a semi-clone, and as such she's classed as a completely new character, which left me shocked. I don't mean to use the wasted slot argument, but I felt that as she's already close to being a clone, they could have gone all the way, and thus used that saved development time to potentially add another clone, or even a semi-clone. Plus, I was never good with Villager, and as Isabel shares a lot of moves with him, that applies to her as well. Sakurai said that one of the reasons why Isabel isn't a clone is because she has different body proportions than Villager, which I honestly don't understand, as all Animal Crossing characters have the same bobblehead shape, but that's still how I feel. Again, this is all just how I felt when Isabel was revealed. Now I just don't care, and the only thing about her that bothers me is that fishing rod move, because from my experience, the hitbox is all over the place. Besides, I'm not really one to talk about getting a character I didn't want, considering this game gave me Ridley, King K. Rool, and Joker. Probably my 3 most wanted characters, and my brain's still trying to process the fact that Joker's actually going to be in the game. So if I had to get those 3 in return for a character I didn't want, I'd gladly take that offer. I probably have hundreds of unpopular opinions related to Smash Bros., even on some of the most minuscule things, so let's just leave it there, because otherwise I would go on forever, and I've got to get back to Ultimate.